What started as a routine late-night interview turned into television chaos when Prince Harry faced brutal accusations about his family's private matters, leading to an explosive confrontation that ended with royalty walking off set. The studio, lights blazed with their usual intensity as Jimmy Kimmel adjusted his tie, flipping through his index cards one final time. The audience buzzed with anticipation, phones already recording in hopes of capturing something memorable. Tonight's guest was no ordinary celebrity. Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, had agreed to discuss his latest charitable ventures and upcoming memoir revelations. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Prince Harry," Kimmel announced with his trademark grin, gesturing toward the curtained entrance as the band struck up a welcoming tune. Harry emerged, waving to the crowd with practiced, royal composure, his navy suit impeccable despite the grueling press tour schedule. He settled into the guest chair, exchanging pleasantries as cameras rolled, and the audience's energy reached fever pitch. "Your Royal Highness, thank you for being here," Kimmel began, his tone warm but carrying an undertone that seasoned viewers might recognize as calculated. "I have to say, you've certainly kept busy since stepping back from royal duties." Harry nodded, relaxing slightly. "Thank you for having me, Jimmy. It's been an incredible journey, really. Meghan and I have found our purpose in building something meaningful outside the traditional framework." Speaking of frameworks, Kimmel leaned forward, his expression shifting subtly. "Your recent interviews have certainly broken some traditional frameworks. Some might say you've been quite vocal about family matters that were previously kept private." The studio audience sensed the shift in atmosphere, their chatter dying to an expectant whisper. Harry's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, his media training kicking in as he recognized the territory they were entering. "I think it's important to share our truth," Harry replied carefully, "especially when that truth can help others who might be struggling with similar situations. Mental health, family dynamics, finding your own path. These are universal experiences." Kimmel's laugh came out sharper than his usual jovial chuckle. "Your truth, sure. But what about their truth? Your father, your brother? They can't exactly call into my show and give their side of things, can they?" The question hung in the air like smoke, heavy and acrid. Harry's posture straightened, his hands clasping together in a gesture that body language experts would later analyze frame by frame. The audience remained silent, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. "I've always been respectful of my family," Harry said, his voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there moments before. "Everything I've shared has been in the context of healing and moving forward." "Respectful?" Kimmel's eyebrows shot up in theatrical surprise. "You literally wrote about private conversations with your dying grandmother. You detailed arguments with your brother that happened behind closed doors. Some people might call that a betrayal of trust rather than respect." The words hit like physical blows. Harry's jaw clenched visibly, his knuckles whitening as his hands pressed together. The studio audience began to murmur, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats as they realized they were witnessing something far beyond typical late-night banter. "That's completely unfair." Harry's voice rose slightly, cutting through the studio's acoustics with unexpected sharpness. "You're taking complex family dynamics and reducing them to tabloid sound bites. Everything I've shared has been to help people understand that even privileged families struggle with communication and support." Kimmel leaned back in his chair, sensing blood in the water. "But here's what I don't understand, Harry, and maybe you can help me out here. You left the royal family citing privacy concerns, wanting to protect your wife and children from media intrusion. Then you immediately signed multi-million-dollar deals to share the most intimate details of your family's private moments. How do you reconcile that?" The question landed with devastating precision. Harry's carefully maintained composure began to crack, his breathing becoming visibly deeper as he processed the accusation embedded in Kimmel's words. The studio lights seemed to intensify, casting harsh shadows across his face as he struggled to formulate a response that wouldn't sound defensive. "You're twisting my words and my intentions," Harry said, his voice now carrying an unmistakable note of anger. "Privacy and transparency aren't mutually exclusive when you're trying to heal generational trauma and help others do the same." "Generational trauma," Kimmel repeated, his tone dripping with skepticism. "Is that what we're calling it when you profit from airing your family's dirty laundry? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks less like healing and more like—" The sentence hung unfinished, but its implication reverberated through the studio like a thunderclap. Harry's face flushed crimson, his royal composure finally cracking, under the weight of Kimmel's calculated provocation. "More like what, exactly?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the studio's suddenly oppressive silence. "Please, Jimmy, finish that thought. I'd love to hear what you really think." The audience collectively held its breath, sensing they were witnessing television history in the making. Kimmel's usual comedic timing had transformed into something far more sinister, his smile widening as he realized he had pushed the prince to his breaking point. "More like exploitation," Kimmel finished with deliberate slowness, each syllable dripping with accusation. "You've turned your family's pain into profit, and now you're sitting here trying to dress it up as some noble cause. But we all see what this really is. Revenge." The word revenge echoed through the studio like a gunshot. Harry shot forward in his chair, his hands gripping the armrest so tightly his knuckles went white. Several audience members gasped, audibly, their phones capturing every micro-expression as the prince's carefully constructed public persona began to disintegrate. "That is absolutely disgraceful." Harry's voice shook with barely controlled fury. "You know nothing about what my family has been through, what we've sacrificed, what we've endured. To sit there and reduce our pain to some calculated business decision is beneath contempt." Kimmel's eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. "Oh, I know plenty. I know about the Netflix deal, the Spotify contract, the book advance. I know about the interviews where you threw your stepmother under the bus, where you questioned your father's parenting, where you painted your brother as a jealous villain, all while claiming you just want privacy and peace. You're twisting everything." Harry's voice cracked with emotion, his composure completely shattered now. "Camilla has been manipulating the press for decades, playing games while real people suffered real consequences. My father chose her over his children's well-being, over my mother's memory. And William has been so consumed with protecting the institution that he forgot we're supposed to be brothers first." The raw pain in Harry's voice was unmistakable, but Kimmel showed no mercy, pressing his advantage like a predator sensing wounded prey. "So this is all their fault? Poor Harry, the victim in his own story. Tell me, when you were writing those checks from your various media deals, did you ever consider that maybe, just maybe, your family's version of events might be different from yours? Different?" Harry's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Different like how they spun my mother's death? Different like how they covered up Andrew's scandals while crucifying Meghan for wearing the wrong shade of lipstick? Different like how they leaked stories about my mental health struggles to distract from their own failures?" The studio audience was now completely silent, the weight of Harry's accusations settling over them like a suffocating blanket. Kimmel leaned forward, his expression shifting from mockery to something approaching genuine malice. "Your mother," Kimmel said slowly, "Diana would be ashamed of what you've become. She protected you boys from this exact kind of public spectacle. And here you are, serving up your family's private moments like entertainment for the masses. She died trying to shield you from the media circus, and you've turned yourself into the ringmaster." The mention of Diana hit Harry like a physical blow. He recoiled as if slapped, his face draining of color before flushing an even deeper shade of red. The audience began murmuring uneasily, sensing that Kimmel had crossed a line that should never have been approached, let alone obliterated. "Don't you dare!" Harry's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, each word carefully enunciated with the precision of barely controlled rage. "Don't you dare speak about my mother. You didn't know her? You don't understand what she went through, and you certainly don't have the right to use her memory as a weapon against me." But Kimmel wasn't finished. He sensed total victory within his grasp, the complete destruction of his guest's dignity almost within reach. "She'd be heartbroken, Harry. Absolutely heartbroken to see you've become everything she tried to protect you from. A man who sells family secrets for fame and fortune. You've dishonored her memory more than any tabloid ever could." Harry's entire body went rigid, his breathing becoming rapid and shallow as the full weight of Kimmel's character assassination settled over him. The studio lights seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, casting stark shadows that made both men appear almost demonic under the harsh illumination. "You want to know what my mother would think?" Harry's voice emerged as a low growl, each word vibrating with decades of suppressed rage. "She'd be disgusted by what you just did. She'd recognize the same tactics that killed her. The manipulation, the deliberate cruelty, the complete absence of basic human decency." The audience shifted uncomfortably, sensing they were witnessing something that had spiraled far beyond entertainment into genuine psychological warfare. Several people in the front rows exchanged worried glances, their excitement replaced by growing unease as they realized the human cost of the spectacle unfolding before them. Kimmel's smile had transformed into something truly ugly now, his usual comedic persona completely abandoned in favor of raw malice. "Oh, please, spare us the martyrdom narrative. Your mother made her choices, just like you're making yours. The only difference is she had the grace to keep some dignity while you're out here airing every piece of dirty laundry for profit." "Dignity?" Harry's voice cracked with incredulous fury. "You call what happened to her dignified? She was hunted, stalked, and ultimately killed by the same machine you're feeding right now. And here you sit, using her death as ammunition in your pathetic attempt to humiliate me on national television." The studio's atmosphere had become toxic, charged with an electricity that made everyone present acutely aware they were witnessing something that would haunt late-night television forever. The cameramen continued filming with professional detachment, but their faces showed clear discomfort at being complicit in what was rapidly becoming a public execution. "I'm not the one who dragged her into this," Kimmel shot back, his voice rising to match Harry's intensity. "You're the one who can't stop talking about her, using her memory to justify every self-serving decision you make. My mother would have wanted this. My mother would have understood that. It's manipulation, pure and simple." Harry's hands began to tremble visibly, the last vestiges of his self-control evaporating under Kimmel's relentless assault. "She would have wanted me to be happy. She would have wanted me to protect my family the way she tried to protect us. She would have wanted me to break the cycle of abuse and silence that destroyed her." "Abuse?" Kimmel's eyebrows shot up in theatrical disbelief. "Now your family abused you?" Poor little prince in his palace, so traumatized by his life of incredible privilege that he had to flee to California and sign multi-million-dollar deals to cope with the trauma. "Do you even hear yourself?" The mockery in Kimmel's tone was so thick it was almost visible, his words dripping with contempt as he systematically dismantled every aspect of Harry's pain and presented it as entitled whining. The audience had gone completely silent now, many looking genuinely disturbed by the cruelty they were witnessing. "Privilege doesn't protect you from emotional damage." Harry's voice was barely controlled now, each word fighting to escape through gritted teeth. "Money doesn't heal the wounds left by watching your mother's coffin on television, by growing up knowing your family failed to protect the person you loved most. But you wouldn't understand that, would you, Jimmy? Your empathy seems to have been surgically removed." Kimmel leaned back in his chair with evident satisfaction, savoring the complete psychological demolition of his guest. "My empathy is fine. I just reserve it for people who deserve it, not spoiled children who throw public tantrums when they don't get their way. Your grandmother served her country for 70 years. Your father has dedicated his life to duty and service. Your brother is preparing to be king. And you? You write tell-all books and give interviews to Oprah. Service? Harry's laugh was harsh and bitter. You call covering up scandals and protecting the institution over protecting people's service? You call forcing a grieving 12-year-old to walk behind his mother's coffin for the sake of public relations service? You call decades of emotional neglect and manipulation service? The raw pain in Harry's voice was now completely exposed, his anguish laid bare for millions of viewers to witness. But instead of evoking sympathy, his vulnerability only seemed to encourage Kimmel's sadistic pleasure in his guest's suffering. Everyone's got sob stories, Harry, Kimmel said dismissively, waving his hand as if brushing away Harry's trauma, like an annoying insect. The difference is most people don't turn their family dysfunction into a media empire. Most people work through their issues privately, with dignity, without dragging everyone they've ever known through the mud for profit. Harry's face had gone beyond red now, approaching purple as his blood pressure spiked under the sustained psychological assault. His breathing had become labored, and several people in the audience were beginning to look genuinely concerned for his well-being rather than entertained by his humiliation. "That's enough," Harry said quietly, his voice suddenly deadly calm in a way that was far more terrifying than his previous shouting. The abrupt shift in his demeanor sent chills through the studio as everyone recognized they were witnessing someone who had been pushed beyond their breaking point. But Kimmel, drunk on his own cruelty and the intoxicating power of destroying someone on live television, couldn't recognize the warning signs. "Oh, now you want to control the narrative? That's rich coming from someone who spent years spinning stories about his own family. Tell me, Harry, what's next? Another Netflix documentary about how mean Jimmy Kimmel was to you?" The studio fell into absolute silence as Harry slowly stood up, his movements deliberate and controlled in a way that screamed danger. His eyes had gone completely cold, all emotion drained from his face except for a barely contained fury that seemed to radiate from his very core. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Jimmy?" Harry's voice cut through the silence like a blade, each word precisely articulated with aristocratic precision that reminded everyone present exactly who they were dealing with. "It's not that you're a bully. It's not even that you're cruel. It's that you're mediocre." Kimmel's smile finally faltered, confusion replacing his sadistic satisfaction as he realized the dynamic in the room had shifted completely. The audience sensed it too, the energy changing from uncomfortable witnessing to anticipatory silence as they waited for whatever was coming next. "You're a second-rate comedian who peaked a decade ago, desperately clinging to relevance by tearing down people who are actually trying to make a difference in the world," Harry continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You've built your entire career on the pain of others, and tonight you've shown everyone exactly what kind of person you really are." The color drained from Kimmel's face as he realized he had lost complete control of the situation. His usual quick wit deserted him entirely, leaving him speechless as Harry's withering assessment echoed through the studio. "My mother taught me that there are two types of people in this world," Harry said, straightening to his full height and radiating the kind of regal authority that generations of breeding had ingrained in his DNA. "Those who lift others up, and those who tear them down to make themselves feel important. She was the former. You, Jimmy, are pathetically and obviously the latter." The silence in the studio was now complete and absolute, broken only by the quiet hum of cameras that continued rolling despite the obvious desire of everyone present to look away from what had become a complete character assassination in reverse. "The difference between us," Harry continued, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of royal dignity, "is that when I share my story, I do it to help others heal. When you attack people, you do it because you're empty inside and can only feel powerful by making others small. And that, more than anything else, is what my mother would find truly disgusting." Kimmel sat frozen in his chair, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a fish gasping for air. The confident malice that had driven his assault had evaporated completely, leaving behind only a hollow shell of a man who had finally encountered someone who wouldn't be intimidated by his bullying. "This interview is over," Harry announced, removing his microphone with practiced ease and dropping it onto the chair as he prepared to leave. "I came here to discuss important work, to talk about helping veterans and supporting mental health initiatives. Instead, I found myself subjected to the kind of calculated cruelty that belongs in a psychiatric textbook, not on television." The prince turned toward the exit, his departure carrying the kind of finality that made it clear there would be no reconciliation, no handshake, no professional courtesy to smooth over what had transpired. The audience watched in stunned silence as he strode toward the stage exit with the bearing of a man who had remembered exactly who he was and what he was worth. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harry said, pausing at the curtain and turning back to address the audience directly, his voice carrying easily through the studio without amplification. "You've just witnessed exactly why the media industry is failing. When entertainment becomes indistinguishable from cruelty, when hosts value ratings over human dignity, we all lose something essential." With that final devastating observation, Prince Harry disappeared through the curtain, leaving behind a studio full of people who suddenly understood they had witnessed something that would define late-night television for decades to come. The cameras continued rolling on Kimmel's stunned face as the show's producers scrambled to figure out how to end what had become the most catastrophic interview in television history. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Social media exploded with clips of the confrontation, but public opinion was overwhelmingly against Kimmel. His calculated cruelty had backfired spectacularly, transforming him from entertainer to pariah overnight. The incident became a watershed moment about respect and professionalism in entertainment, proving that even princes have limits, and bullies eventually face consequences.